Thank you very much. Okay, I'm about to do a presentation about two projects we did. And you realize Kathy put in a German-speaking context, so I'm an Austrian and now a German working and living and working from Switzerland, so we have a German perspective. But most of our research is actually international, and even the first piece of research I present, because it's international in terms of Germany, Austria, Liechtenstein, and Switzerland. But then I also want to present a second piece of research, which was funded by the EU, comprising also people who are here in this room, about how we can help leaders in their practice and also in their health. So I present actually two projects, and as you said, I should keep my presentation shorter and shorter and shorter. I will skip some slides, so you will get the presentation, and don't be afraid if I skip some slides. Yeah, this is just because it was on the laptop now, but I will not talk faster. I can do, but I think you will not enjoy that. So how are you? Because this is about health, and I'm also worried about your health. How are your, how satisfied are you? And yeah, you're doing fine. Some of you, I'm very aware, some of you would actually like to stand up for a moment, stretch their legs and breathe. Some don't. Yeah, but please get up all, and these are not embarrassed if they get up for a moment. Just stand up. This is not the coffee break, Kathy. No worries. No worries. This is just and I will not do with you any kind of more activities. Just take a deep breath. Yeah, is this okay? It would be very strange to talk about health and then... okay, I also try to contribute to your health by trying to talk in a nice way. But so now you sit down again, yeah, as politicians also do very often. So as we have no windows, I want to make you aware of the beauty of this country. But I'm very sure we will see more of the country, and I'm very happy. But also what Michael mentioned in his speech about the situation, we are all very aware. And we had conversations yesterday at the conference dinner. But I'm very thankful to talk here, and also to talk from a Swiss perspective, which Switzerland is actually not part of the European Union, but we have quite strong ties. And working from the Institute of Management and Economics and Education, we have quite some projects in your area, what you discuss in school leadership. We have around 15 to 20 projects. These are like the titles of some of them. And you see we do research about school leadership, their working situations, their working conditions, their training and development programs and so on. But we also do research on their practices and what they have to do in terms of staff development, human resource management in a broader context. But also, for instance, we have a project with the Bosch Foundation to turn around schools which are in very difficult circumstances, and where we have a great body of literature saying, very easy, just change the principal, change half of the staff, make reconstitution or other things, but we are allowed by legal status to do that. And if you have to develop policies around these issues, you can, as Michael said, not easily borrow, because we have to take into account your own legal, the culture, and other things in your country, which matters to develop policy, to put policy into practice. So these are some of our projects. We also run a CAS, Educational Governance and School Management, so we try also to disseminate our research findings, and we are a research institute, into practice by working with people, with and for people, principals. And as you mentioned in the introductory, we have this wonderful symposium, 800 last year from 52 countries, so it's more international than Europe. And we already have, yesterday, 450 people registered already. So I think even the economic crisis hit in quite tremendously. There is, again, a good group coming together from policy, from practice, from foundations, from different sectors. In the PowerPoint, you will have this link, and there you can download some of the literature, because I'm very happy to share our stuff. So the structure of this presentation, I keep the first point, the background, why we investigate and conduct research into leadership very short, because you know that leadership matters, and we also know not so much about how actually it works. Yeah? There are some meta-analysis. There's no heady for school leadership, but Daniel Mues and I, we wrote a paper around these 5 meta-studies. So we have some ideas of what competent or successful or good principals have in common. But we also see that context matters quite a lot. And if you look at a list of theses you can put up, what good, competent, successful principals have in common, it is very much about the person-environment fit. If you have, as Michael is head of the German, what is it in English? The German School Award. And I'm in the jury of the Swiss School Award. And we see principles there. And if I put these principles in our failing schools, they would not survive. So you can have a person wonderful, performing well in one set of schools, not necessarily be as successful in another set of schools or another context. So context really matters a lot. Our study, the first study I want to present, is a study about leadership practices and health. So the sign, I keep that short, is about, we were interested in the work settings of principals. Yeah? We were interested in what are their preferences and whether we find different types of leaders, but we were also interested in whether there are individual factors, so person-related factors, biographical factors, as well as institutional factors, which determine job satisfaction, strain, or even emotional exhaustion as one dimension of burnout. That was our idea. We had different kind of theoretical assumptions. I keep that short, but you could read it in the paper. We had a mixed method design and even a longitudinal approach, and it will also be embedded in the World School Leadership Study, which we start next year. So I present data from the survey and the end of day log, not the qualitative study. We have a response rate about 50% of all principals asked. So this is a data set of 5,394 principals. This is around 33% of the principals in these countries. So I think it's a good data set. And leadership practices, we were interested in actually what do principals like? What are their job preferences? So we had a leadership activity inventory of 400 activities, and through different kind of pre-studies we cut it short to 74 activities, which represent a spectrum of activities. And these 74 activities we asked twice every of these 5,394 principals. We asked them, do you like this activity? And later on we asked them whether they experience strain or burden with these activities. Because if you don't like something, doesn't mean it's stressing you. And here is the top 10 of the most liked activities. And Liechtenstein we just put into Switzerland. Sorry for that, if someone is present from Liechtenstein. And I'm aware, because of the time constraints, you cannot probably read all these 10 activities. You can pick one of the countries, but with the blue indicating quite some commonalities across the 3 German-speaking countries, or the 4 German-speaking countries. And what you see, what they like, are activities around learning, supporting teachers, providing support, developing the school. You can think of your policies, what they should do. This is what they like. Yeah, we can also look at the research, what they should do in terms of what makes a successful principals. And I think this is actually not that bad. They like actually the things they should do. I think this is a good finding. Then we look at the most stressful activities. Yeah, the same activities. And what you find here, very much in common, implementing school reforms. And this is the policy network, yeah. And then you find a lot of activities which I consider as organizational administrative activities. So, interesting finding, probably quite common sense. You are not so much astonished. Yeah? We also had this survey now in 12 countries, and I can, in a few months, a few weeks, I can present some findings how this is in other countries. So if you make some exploratory and confirmatory factor analysis to get some scales out of these 74 activities, then these are the names we gave to these scales. So these are the areas. So different individual activities are combined. I should better go there. Are combined to an area. Okay. And there you see, these are the higher it is, the more they like it, preferences, and the higher it is, the more they experience it as stress. Yeah. And you clearly see this is positive, education, preferences, less stress, classroom teaching, because in most of the countries they also have teaching duties. And if you look what they experience as burden and don't like much, you see organization and administrative activities as well as quality assurance. Because what we realized, we wanted to have a scale called quality management, and it did not work out as a scale. Because principals experience quality assurance, evaluative aspects very different to development activities. Yeah? So you see quality development and quality assurance are two different things. You could say two sides of a coin. Yeah? Okay, but now we know what they like, what they don't like, what they experience as stress. What do they actually do? So we used an experience sampling approach. We had 4,330 diaries. So we analyzed what they actually do. How do they spend their time? And you see, the most activity they do is organization and administration. So this is what they do most, is what they experienced as burden, and they don't like it. You see? And that could cause some dissatisfaction. Yeah? It could cause strain. It could cause even emotional exhaustion. I will tell you that this is not true in a minute. There are other factors. But still it is worrying result, because what they should do, given I listened what you said this morning and yesterday, you would probably focus on these issues. Yeah? And even this. So you would probably have this slice bigger. And I wonder, why don't they spend more time on these issues which they like, which matter to their schools and to their own professional lives? This is a bit worrying result. Obviously, teaching is the biggest standard deviation because it really depends on the school type. Yeah? How much teaching duties they have. We also know where they work. So we see they work in the office, in their own office, most of the time. We see how much they lurk on the corridor. Yeah, we see a faculty room and so on. What was astonishing, we had this Outlook calendar for 5 days, over 3 weeks over the school year. Saturday, first week, I got hundreds of emails. Where is the Saturday? So we quickly had to program the Saturday and the Sunday. And now we have 21 days. We see that a huge percentage of the people work also Saturdays and Sundays. And we know a small percentage work really like hell. They work 80 hours a week. So we know that too. Thank you very much. And then we looked at, we did some analysis, cluster analysis and latent profile analysis. We see that the days, or typical work day, is different. There are some days which are more around quality management, more about representative tasks, or about their own professional development. What more interesting is, are these days more similar to a specific person? And then you are at the idea whether we have different types of school leaders. And we have two types of school leaders, those who teach more and those who teach less. Very clear. And those who teach more, they also do all other activities less. It's very clear. So teaching duties have impact on all the other areas. And that's very important to know also for policy when you think about regulations and how much time they have as teaching duties. But if you do more refined analysis, you actually find something like that. Because you really see there are some school leaders who are the administrative school leaders. There are many. And there are some school leaders who are more the people persons. There are not that many. Yeah. Okay. So now we were worried about health. So what has this impact on the health? And first we used a scale emotional exhaustion. It's one of the 3 dimensions to measure a burnout. And we see the principles are around compared to other working areas like typical managers. Principle, we call them leaders. Yeah? In most of the literature they're called managers because leadership is part of management. But this is also something great we could discuss later, but not in my 30 minutes. But when you use this scale and also the scale of occupational stress and job satisfaction, you see we have 3 different types of school leaders. Those in a risk group. This is this dark blue color. They are very low in job satisfaction, very high in experienced stress, and very high in emotional exhaustion. And interestingly, this 16% is over the whole German-speaking countries. But for instance, in Hessen, it's one of the states in Germany, it's 25%. So every 4th principal is in this risk group. So now you could think, if this matters, probably these are the people who experience organizational and administrative tasks as most stressful. Okay, let's have a look. This is the dark blue, and these are the working areas. And you see organizational tasks are no predictor at all for this belonging, to this group belonging. Because this group experienced all activities as more stressful. And those 42% who are really in a good shape, I would regard them as more healthy than the others, they experience every activity as less strain. So this is not helping us much. So what does help? Just some league tables because they are modern. You actually see that there are quite some significant differences in the cantons and also in the German states. Hessen, for instance, really problematic in these 4 states. But coming to the conditional factors, all these aspects matter. Most matter for job satisfaction, they all matter for job strain and for emotional exhaustion. So the more female you are, yeah, or let's say women, they experience more job strain. We don't know the reason why, but we see there's a gender effect. It's only a slight effect, but there is a gender effect. We also see that age is actually contributing positively. The older you are, the more satisfied you are, the less stress, the less risk in emotional exhaustion. However, dear policymakers, the longer you are on the job as principal, the more stress they have, the less job satisfaction. So actually, a policy advice coming from that would be appoint principals very late and keep them in their job only very short. So at some point, I was told that Cyprus did that. Cyprus had, I think, appointing principals with 559, and then they got early retirement with 60. That was actually a positive policy. No, this is not a good policy for many reasons, but one reason is our findings is cross-sectional. It's not a longitudinal study so far, so this could also be related to generation effects. But then the most important aspect is stress resilience. So are your training and development programs in your countries have a module called health management? You are important. Do you keep healthy yourself? Do you keep your staff healthy? Do you have ideas about, as Michael told about the future, to keep children healthy with all the uncertainty? So actually this should be a policy around health, because health, that's my assumption, is very much related to quality. Of course it is. And then if you come to institutional aspects, you see more coherent an organization is experienced by principal, the better. Yeah. The working atmosphere is also positive, so that they like each other. It matters. It matters for us too if we work in a unit, in a research group. But it is not as important as, do I get help if I experience a problem? And does this person really help me? So this is related to organizational processes and structured and a spirit of social support and collegial professional support. So we would say this is very, very important. And at the same time, this is one of the major tasks a principal has, to develop this kind of culture in a school, this kind of social support. But they also depend with their health, their job satisfaction, their job strain and emotional exhaustion. And if you run path analysis, and we have two different theories and tried out different models, you come to the same results. Stress resilience and social support matters most. So if I give a recommendation to policy, focus on that. Focus on these two aspects. And of course of infrastructure, because they are working conditions. And the same with a different model. Fit indices are quite well. So what are the recommendations? There's the health definition by the World Health Organization. It is not only physical aspects, it's mental, social well-being. You read that, and that means we have, if we want to look on health issues, we have to take all these into account. And that means, actually, on policy level, I would say, you have like two perspectives. If you are worried about the well-being of a person, the most responsibility is probably by the person himself or herself, because the locus of control is with the person. But there are supporting aspects which leadership or management or governance can contribute. So our recommendations in the studies are on 3 different levels: the system, the principal, as well as on the staff level. On the system level, it's the time resources, as I mentioned before. Yeah. In Switzerland, we have some cantons who count the ears of the pupils and then have a formula, and then you know how much time a principal has for the leadership activity. Yeah. So if you're in a working context where you have, let's say, many problems with staff or complaints with parents, or you have to develop these ideas of equity, equality, and inclusion, you need more time. You don't have it, because it's just the number of years in your school. Then it's absolutely about this idea about cooperative leadership, because it's not only the time of the principal or the principal, it's also about the principalship. It's a function, so it's about the leadership team. So there are resource issues, of course. It's also about professionalization, about their training and development opportunities, their support ideas. And then it's a bit about a strategic perspective, what matters most, and put that high. It's about doing the right things and rightly, and not doing about many things and not well enough. On the level of the school leaders, it's the same. It's very much about doing 2 things, and they're not easy to be done. It is self-monitoring, so that they do some reflective activities. What is good for me? Where are my resources? How do I experience the institutional, the social context, and so on? And at the same time, is it following the self-monitoring? It's the self-management. It's changing activities. It's doing things differently. It is optimizing, and it's innovation in activities. And in this presentations, for some of you who are interested, I included some slides as some ideas, but I will skip them now. So there are some ideas. And then on staff level for principals, it gets quite tricky. Because how can you do with your staff this kind of self-monitoring and self-managing? You cannot force someone to get very into your own well-being. You can provide opportunities, yes. But you could not ask a staff room, now think about who is stressing you most. Because it might be the colleague. Or it might be a private situation, and you don't want to share that with your professional colleague, that you have some problems or that someone is ill in your family, and so on, which has impact on your well-being. So you can only provide opportunities, and of course, as I see people from the union too, you can think about working conditions, about processes, about structures, about social support, about strategies, that you put the right things first in school development planning and in school development activities. Okay. And as time is running out, I cannot talk much about the second project. The second project we did the last couple of years, funded by the EU, was actually a development project as well as a research project on our costs, because we were very interested what kind of activities help people for their well-being and to perform better in their job. And we had quite some people involved, and the idea was it is very much about professional reflection. It's about providing opportunities that people can reflect on themselves and about their context, as I said at the beginning, person, environment, interaction, or person, environment, fit. So what we did, we developed a self-assessment. It's not a 360-degree feedback system. It's a system where they get compared to each other. So we developed a competence model, general competences. We developed task-specific competences, actually using these leadership activities. They work online, even through in-tray exercises, problem-solving exercises, and then they get a feedback on all these different scales, or we call them competence dimensions, how they are performing compared to their peers, to school leaders in this project. And we worked already with 3,000 in Europe using this. So when they did this exercise, they get a feedback report, and this feedback report looks like that. They get their scores, high and low, and then they expect that the feedback reports tell them whether they are competent, successful, or good. And we cannot do that. Because first of all, we have no predictability studies, and second, I don't believe that this will happen ever. Because what happens, if someone is very high on achievement motivation, this could be very good in a context, and in the other context, he has to be very aware because there are pitfalls if he ticks like that. If I have a pilot bringing me in here yesterday, I don't want anyone who is very high there and very low there, because he would land like, let's try a bit longer and longer and longer. He would try out to land differently than before. I want someone who is very good in, I don't want to make mistakes. And I land very precisely, yeah? So context matters a lot. But even if you are, if you want to understand a person, if you tick in a certain way, because of self-observation, you can change your behavior. You can be very low on being interested in other persons, or lower than others. But in your context, it matters that you talk to Sabine every morning. And they can change their behavior and talk to Sabine every morning. And how are you? Yeah? Even if he or she is maybe not that interested. Because we can monitor, we can self-regulate. And that's why we say we cannot judge you. We can give you scores, how you are compared to others, and then you have to find out what you, in your context. And the result of the coaches, because after this feedback report, they went through workshop, they went through coaches, and I have some more information in the PowerPoint. You will see that, me clicking through in a minute. And the coaches said, wow, we started the coaching actually where we usually end our coaching. Because the person has understood how he ticks and already analyzed different kind of situations where there are pitfalls. So we got the impression it's a very strong instrument. I will click through that, through the exercises in the workshop, through the coaching process. So let me click through. I want to show two results at the end. First of the two results. We did an evaluation and we looked at the impact on various levels. You can read what is written under the scales names: personal reflection, CBD, personal growth, performance, changes in the organization. And the result was it had impact. Yeah, if they did this assessment and got the feedback report, it had impact. But it had higher impact if they did the feedback report in a workshop. So workshop contributed on the impact. And then those who did not only have the feedback, the workshop, but also the coaching opportunities, and we worked with 800 principals last year, they have the highest scores. So there again we see the multiple learning opportunities come together to the benefit on all these kind of levels. And you can see detailed results in the presentation. And the recommendation is like that. Those who did coaching, 89% recommended to colleagues. But only Now only 87 who only did the workshop. So even on this kind of insight generating, it helped. And then this is the last slide I show today. And there's another one saying thank you, but this is the last slide with the results. We also worked not only with principals, but also with teachers aspiring principalship. And we had a dramatic effect. Because in all countries, we want to marketize this profession because we have too little applicants. And unfortunately, there were people participating in the program who wanted to become principal and changed their opinion, I don't want to become principal anymore. This is really traumatic. And we were quite frustrated about these 24%. But maybe it's good, yeah? If they had developed a better understanding about themselves and they say maybe the time is not right. Interestingly, they changed their perspective. Maybe a deputy would be best, or being in the senior management team. In total, we generated more people who are motivated to take on leadership tasks, but we came away from this yesterday teacher, tomorrow principals. But it is about taking on responsibility in our schools in various ways to contribute to what is important, it's development of our children. And I think at the end, that was a very, very positive result. So thank you very much for your capacity to listen after all this morning.